Well, firstly, thank you so much for visiting the UK Pavilion here at ADIPEC. I'm CEO of the EIC, which is Energy Industries Council. We're a large energy trade association, and we're proud to be the organisers of the UK Pavilion at many energy shows around the world. ADIPEC is the biggest energy show in the world, and it is also the home of the biggest UK Pavilion. We have 100 British supply chain companies here in the UK Pavilion, and we're delighted about that. And it's our 20th year, actually, this year, running the UK Pavilion at ADIPEC. So to your question about the role of ADIPEC in terms of decarbonisation, because ADIPEC, being the biggest energy show in the world, has an absolutely critical role. Everything that ADIPEC says is heard around the world. So the conference program, the messages that are laid out as part of what ADIPEC is trying to achieve, that has impact around the world. The companies that are here, of which there are thousands, and of course 100 British companies here in the pavilion, they all come from a heritage of oil and gas. But of course what we know is the energy supply chain is a fully integrated supply chain covering oil and gas and renewables and hydrogen and nuclear and so on. So this, of course, is a show which is the home of the world's integrated energy supply chain. And with ADIPEC now focusing on decarbonisation and energy transition, it's opening up the dialogue about how can the existing supply chain bring its innovation and its skills and its capacity to accelerate decarbonisation. And so we think that's really important, and we applaud the work that ADIPEC is doing to take the lead with that discussion. So EIC, of course, is an 80-year-old energy trade association, and we're the 7th largest energy trade association in the world. And so that means that we are a global organisation and we cover all energy sectors. So our role is to do 3 things. Firstly, it's to help companies around the world to understand the energy market. So the changing market as the energy mix changes, policy changes around the world that have an impact on perhaps oil and gas is reducing and energy transition is increasing. So helping companies, and particularly our members, to understand the changing market. Secondly, to then pursue opportunities around the world using EIC data to make sure that they know which are the best projects that suit the needs of those member companies. And of course, our data now is more than 50% involved in renewable and energy transition projects. Whereas if you go back 5 years ago, it was only 10% renewable and energy transition projects. So it's amazing the change in the project mix around the world. The third thing we're here to do is to then be the voice of the energy supply chain around the world. And what I can tell you is the voice of the supply chain is very loud right now. They need help to participate fully in the transition. Companies are saying they have the investment, they have the skills, they have the ambition to drive forward with the transition, but they need policymakers to help them, to provide clearer access to funding, more consistent policies rather than changing policies around transition, and ultimately they need faster, larger projects coming into the market for the supply chain to participate in. And our job as the voice of the supply chain around the world is to get that message to policymakers. Yeah, the first thing I would say is that's a great question around kind of where are the best places in the world for British companies to work. First thing I would say is that the UK supply chain, the energy supply chain, is one of the largest energy supply chains in the world, and we have data that tracks all of the world's energy supply chain increasingly. Where are those companies around the world? What capabilities do they have? What sectors are they in? And we're close to finishing that work globally, and the UK supply chain is now, we can confirm, one of the largest in the world. That's reflected not just in the number of companies we have in the UK, but also the global community of British people that have gone from the UK and set up their businesses and their homes around the world. And this is really important. So that means that when we now look at energy markets around the world, we're not just looking at it from the island of the UK. We have people who are already very established around the world, of course, absolutely, including here in the UAE. So they actually, I would say, the answer to your question about which markets are best, all markets right now are good. And so this is a market we've never seen before. all regions of the world and all energy markets of the world are booming right now. This is partly a post-COVID recovery, but it's also partly a reaction to the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the world's realization of the importance of energy security and certainty of fuel supply. That means that right now, I wouldn't say there is one market which is good. All markets are good, but of course, we are here in the Middle East, and the Middle East is absolutely one of the most important global markets. Okay, so obstacles to decarbonize, of course. The first one is, and this is for all companies, I would say, for EIC and actually for many of the companies that are here at ADIPEC this week. Firstly, they've got to look at their own businesses first, right? And say, okay, we understand that there's a policy environment around us which is providing some guidance of what we need to do. And I may have some customers providing differing opinions of what we need to do, but actually, what do my business want to do? And so I'd say for each business, that's the first obstacle to get over, is this kind of mindset of, I can't wait any longer. I have to fix my own business. I have to decarbonize my own business. I have to use science-based targets to address my own emissions. That's what we're doing in EIC. So as well as planting, we've planted 1,000 trees this year because, did you know, when it's your 80th anniversary, you celebrate with oak trees. So we've planted 1,000 trees this year as part of our offset program to address offsetting our emissions, but we're also looking to reduce our emissions as well. The second thing then we have to do, and companies generally have to do, of course, is to then look to the different regions of the world that they're based in and comply with the needs of those local governments and customers. And that varies in each country. And what we recommend is to do is not just then deal with your own requirements, but then look at the countries you work within and meet those obligations quickly. Sometimes the obligations for decarbonisation are not binding and legal yet, but our recommendation is they will be soon. So every company in the supply chain should now be proactive and make sure they comply and they qualify for work around the world even before it's mandatory, because that gives them competitive advantage. Others in the end will have to do it, but if companies are more proactive, decarbonize first, meet their customers and the government's guidelines now, and they do it as if it was mandatory, then they will win, where others will be too late.